All right, cool.
Okay, welcome, and thank you for joining us today for our Complete Guide to Penetration for Security Professionals webinar. Finding out your cybersecurity weaknesses before hackers do is critical to preventing system breaches, fraud, and cyber attacks. This webinar will guide you through the fundamentals, elements, and processes of penetration testing and how to interpret the results. So a little bit about the company hosting today's webinar, RSI Security. We're headquartered in San Diego, California, with offices in Portland and LA. We are the nation's premier managed IT security and compliance advisory service provider with over 50 employees and 400 consultants, founded in 2008. And let's see, we have penetration testing certified professionals, and we are a leading PCI, QSA, and ASV company in California. We are experts at guiding high trust, HIPAA, and privacy compliance. Regarding certifications, we have an experienced team of certified assessors, analysts, program managers, and technologists. Here are some of the certifications that we have, including PCI, QSA, High Trust, Certified Ethical Hacker, and many more. So let me go ahead and tell you a little bit about today's speaker, Ben Mead. Ben is a cybersecurity professional with over 13 years of experience in healthcare, biosciences, finance, and government industries. He's directed IT teams and is currently a university professor. He's deeply interested in technology and passionate about cybersecurity. So with this background, Ben is definitely qualified to address us today on penetration testing. So before we get into the presentation, just some quick housekeeping notes. We'll be doing a 15-minute Q&A at the end of the presentation. So feel free to submit any questions throughout the presentation using the question and answer feature at the bottom of the screen. And this presentation deck, along with some other resources, will be provided to you tomorrow via email. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to you, Ben.
Awesome. Thanks, Eileen. So one of the things that I'd like to start off with today is in using the chat feature. In a few words, let's get what's on your mind for this webinar. Everything you've heard about penetration testing is true. I mean, to an extent, right? So let's hear what you guys have to say. All right, learn more about it. It's good. That's why we're here. It's good. One of the reasons why I like asking this question is that it helps me be able to, yeah, that's a really good question too. Be able to guide the conversation that we're going to have today. There's a lot to cover. We've got about a half hour to be able to cover it. And as you guys know, as security professionals, cybersecurity as an industry is huge, and there's a lot to be able to cover. So I want to make sure that we hit at least 80% of what everybody's coming here for today. We've got some good questions here. Will it break my enterprise systems? If you are looking for it to, it may. If you're looking for it not to, it may still though. So we'll actually cover that as we go further along. In preparing your org for pen testing, this is a perfect one for that. You're studying an AWS course? Oh, awesome. Yeah, containers and Lambda and all of that. We'll cover that at a high level near the end. That is really good. And then the last one I'm seeing on here is understanding individual needs to be certified. Oh, OSCP, TEH, and others. Yeah. You know, we may do an alternate session on helping you prepare to be a certified pen tester and all the ins and outs that it takes on that. There's a lot of steps to it as you're growing up the ladder of becoming an ultimate pen tester. This is good. Okay, good. Some of the stuff that we will get through here, in addition to those statements there, is we're going to get additional visibility into our environment. We're going to get improved security posture because we're going to take action. We're making this stuff actionable at the end of the day. So taking a look under the hood of what pen testing is really all about, we want to first understand what is pen testing, how is it different than vulnerability scanning? So let's demystify some of the terms there. Let's explain why it's important, how it relates to regulatory compliance, some of the technical aspects of getting a pen tester into your environment so you can have the least amount of breaks, like we were talking about earlier, as well as what environments can be pen tested. Maybe some demystifying some, hey, I'm totally secure if I have this type of architecture built out there. What it means to conduct a penetration test in a serverless environment. It's probably a good one for the AWS piece and anybody else that's going serverless. Discerning whether or not we need an internal or external pen test and the ins and outs of that, and then performing the pen test in alignment with various regulatory compliances. All right, getting into it, what is a vulnerability scanner and what is a pen test? As you guys have grown through technology, antivirus scans your systems and it presents you with a report. It could be positives or false positives. With a vulnerability scan, it's a little bit more intensive than that, and you're scanning for known vulnerabilities. But the difference in that versus a pen test is actually simulated hacking, actually trying to break in and loot the box, trying to get access and see what the bad guys could actually see what the bad actors are able to do, and use these tools and techniques to be able to do so. What do you get when you do a vulnerability scan? You get the compliance and regulatory checkbox. That's good. What do you get out of a pen test? You get that, plus you also get some insight into the tangential risk vectors that you may have within your environment. These are some areas in which you may say the vulnerabilities have been patched for all known vulnerabilities, but the way in which we're providing access to our production environment would allow a bad actor, should they phish one of our employees or hold one of our employees ransom, an easy vector in getting into our infrastructure. What gets tested? You do internal and external systems for the vulnerability scanning. When we're doing the pen test, though, we're actually trying to break the system, engage how secure it is, really overload it, see if we can get in, and again, within scope. What do we get at the end of the day? Well, you get it. Find your vulnerabilities, but it's not based on the workflows. You get more of that in the pen test. The team focuses on what you want to protect. Get a hacker's point of view. And you also get an insight into how to protect your loot, or what the hacker would say is the loot. One of the easier ways to really consider the difference between a vulnerability scan and a pen test from the guide here is nobody really wants a rebranded Qualys scan. It's not why we're here. We want someone to actually look at our environment and say, yeah, you guys are doing all the right things. Here are some things to be able to improve your infrastructure and your security posture. More than just saying, hey, here's some pretty pictures on a graph that says you're one way or another. It could be a red, yellow, green type of a report. And if it's not actionable, it doesn't make any sense, then what did you really pay for? We don't look good in orange, right? So here are some of the reasons why we want to be able to perform a pen test. We have a couple of requirements listed here. There's more requirements for the different regulatory bodies that are out there that you'll need to adhere to based on your organization's needs. Just to highlight a few, PCI DSS requirements. We need to implement a risk assessment process that is performed at least annually upon significant changes to the environment and identify critical assets, threats, vulnerabilities, and result in a formal assessment. If you're doing just the vulnerability scan, may not be enough to be saying that you're reasonably tackling the needs out of this and have that be just the formal assessment. Under HIPAA, conduct an accurate and thorough assessment of the potential risks and vulnerabilities to the confidentiality and the whole CIA triad for those who have gone through some security training of all of our electronic protected health information. Under GDPR, technical and organization measures to ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk. Yeah, and this also plays into some of the frameworks like FAIR and others as well. And then GLBA on the finance side. Implement and maintain a comprehensive information security program appropriate to your size. Identify reasonably foreseeable internal and external risks. It's important. And access the sufficiency and the safeguards that are in place. So since this is RSI providing this webinar, let's plug RSI for a second. In RSI's pen testing, we emulate the bad actors. We do that in a way, and we'll walk through the process of it in just a second here. We do that to really understand what we can exploit and the vulnerabilities that are discovered, and then giving you that insight. And here's the vulnerabilities that are discovered. Here's what was actually logged on your system, and here's ways that you can protect it post the report. At the end of the assessment, we provide measurable, real outcomes in a nice, easy to read report that talks about your company's resistance to security threats that are out there. And then the disclaimer, which comes back to some of the earlier question of, well, we do our best and we do take care to make sure that we don't knock over any servers or services. However, there is a little bit of risk to be had in this. So as you're preparing your environment for a penetration tester to be able to join your infrastructure for an internal threat assessment or an external one, do know that there is a risk of an outage, of the machine getting knocked over or breaking something. All right. But maybe compliance isn't enough for you. Here's a couple questions to really think about when you're thinking about your test. When you're taking a look at your internal and external, and whether you're not going to do it, like the meme shows there, we could pay $50K for a pen test, or we could pay $500,000 for a ransom because we got hit by ransomware. Or that's going to be your cybersecurity insurance premium that you're going to need to pay out, right? Depending on what's going on. You have internal threats and you have external threats. Internal threats include even your IT team. They can become compromised. They could become the bad actors. So some of the things to look for within this. Make sure that behind the firewall, the nice soft nugget center of your environment is protected, and you've got safeguards in place to be able to limit access to production. You've got two-person rules going in there. You've got all of the bells and whistles to be able to fire off and say that something's going on, and you can actually make action on it, and that those logs are offloaded somewhere else. It's a great way to be able to test that. So you wouldn't want a bad actor getting in your environment and have that be the test. They're going to go in there, they're going to try to cover their tracks, and when they do that, you may not be able to recover from that. The external side, lock down your APIs. Don't be displaying all kinds of information that you shouldn't be displaying. Don't make it easier for these people that are out there and they're attacking every day. I mean, that's why we have firewalls. We take a look at your firewall log. I mean, when's the last time you actually took a look at your firewall log? Yeah. We'll go through a little bit more on the different types of tests, from the black box testing, white box testing, gray box testing. Some of the social engineering I'm going to leave out of this. We can also perform social engineering tests, which are very enlightening. They're also very, very flashy because it gets people involved. But in this session, we're really going to speak more to the technical aspects of systems scanning, systems vulnerabilities, and simulated hacking, as well as the application side. Keep in mind the question though, where are your threats and what are you actually trying to protect? Because at the end of the day, tests, we use the test to further complete our risk matrix. This is something for the managers that are out there and the leaders that are out there. We want to be able to help lower our overall risk profile. Because some of the things that we're going to put into place will be depending on what the risk impact is and how valuable the data is that we're trying to protect. Make sure that your risk matrix is up to date. but know a few things about the pen test. Sometimes in a pen test, we actually don't find anything. And sometimes the customers don't actually expect us to find anything. And if we don't find anything, you know, hats off to you for having a really nice, secured, matured environment that meets the security model that's you're trying to protect for the assets that you have. And sometimes we do find significant issues, or even in cases where the customer doesn't expect us to actually find anything. We'll find a significant issue with a workflow process, with some of the keys that are stored and management and policies and stuff like that, that isn't normally something out of the scan or what you would consider part of the pen test. Scan reports that are provided do help you prioritize your risks. So it may have a risk score that's really, really low within your risk matrix. We come back with the risk report and you say, you know, this normally would look really low, but in your case, because of your industry and the vertical that you're in, and also your infrastructure and your maturity model within your team, it's actually really high risk. It's very likely that this is going to happen within the next year, and it'll likely cost you somewhat, you know, X millions of dollars to be able to remediate. So we will be able to absolutely help you with that. Lastly, on this, for things to know about pen tests, when we perform, or any other pen test environment performs a pen test and it's wide, it's very broad in scope, we're going to focus on what we feel is going to be the most valuable, where the jewels are, and then randomize the remaining targets. We may not be able to get it to everything because of the scope. Who doesn't like reports, right? Who doesn't like PowerPoint presentations? At the end of a pen test, we'll get a nice report demonstrating the risks that are based off of the assessment process. The thing to take away from this session, though, is with this report, you want to be able to prepare for your next risk assessment and really have that clear understanding what your risk and vulnerabilities are. You want to take this and add it to your risk tracking system, whether that's a spreadsheet like we were demonstrating in the previous slide, or some other type of risk management application that's out there. I want to take that and be able to communicate effectively to the business where the risks are. Some of these risks could be inside of your business processes, and you may decide that this business process isn't valuable enough because of the overall risk that you're holding on to. At the end of the day, who holds the bag? You buy additional insurance. You put in that $200,000 worth of cybersecurity equipment to be able to mitigate a business unit that doesn't even make that, or would just otherwise just drain the business. Is that a risk that you're willing to hold on to? And some of those decisions you'll be able to articulate better through having that vulnerability scan. Okay, so you get the report and you're ready to go. What do you do with it? What are some of the steps that you want to take? Well, so you got visibility. Now it's time to prioritize and take actions on your risks. Make them actionable. The good part about these risks and vulnerability assessments is we tell you technically it's that making it understandable to your technical team, as well as to yourself, what was done and how you can go about remediating that risk, whether it's, you know, closing a report, cleaning up some of the defaults that are in there, walk you through the OWASP top 10 and determine, you know, where your, let's say for instance, your cross-site scripting is a problem, and how your web application firewall is not actually picking up on different things, or it was picking up on it, but it wasn't blocking it. It was detecting, but it wasn't preventing. These types of things. Redefine, update your workflows and workloads. This could take some development, so you might want to be prepared for that. It could be that your processes in having your technical team go through and release code to production needs to be redone. Maybe your automation scripts need a new once over because of the way that identity and access management is being used to access these environments, or how the workflow actually opens you up to more vulnerabilities that maybe you otherwise didn't know. Gonna refresh your password policies. I mean, this is all always something. Expand and complete your MFA deployment. I know there's somebody out, I could throw a poll up there, but there's somebody out there that doesn't have everything under MFA. MFA, all your things. Secure all your things. MFA, all of your logins. If your username and password becomes exploited and known by somebody else and they can start playing as you, use that second factor of authentication or third factor of authentication. Protect yourself. Don't let them start impersonating you and get more access and get that man in the middle there. All right, how about that? Able to hear now? Yay, all right, go technology. Woohoo. Which number did I cut out on? Good test question, right? On 5, okay. So on 11. Yeah, make sure you MFA all your things. If you're not already MFAing all your things, please do that. That's complete that MFA rollout. Get identity and access management under control. Get Okta rolled out if you're using Okta. If you're using some other product that's out there, get that thing totally fleshed out. And then MFA also your internal access as well. It's not the day and age anymore where everybody behind the firewall is safe, especially in this post-COVID era, where everybody's working from home and going in from VPN. The threat landscape is a completely different animal, which is great for the bad actors, not so great for the blue team. Audit your logs, ensure that they're actionable. It would be really terrible if your logs were so overwhelming that you couldn't see what was going on in your environment. Sometimes hiding in plain sight is really easy when you have too many logs. If you just start pumping in bad data or just regular data to then launch an attack, you're trying to hide yourself in the masses. You don't want to be susceptible to that. Make sure that your logs are actionable and they're reviewed regularly and they're pruned effectively. The vulnerability and pen test will be able to illuminate where these logs are effective and they're not effective. Because as you're going through and you're simulating that hacking event, you're going to be able to see in the logs, because we're going to leave the logs alone, and really point out saying, hey, this is what we did. Did it show up in your logs? And you'll be able to take action appropriately. Then clean up your attack surface. 6 is 7. Clean up your attack surface and then clean it up again. Number 6 is more on orphaned items. You want to clean up any orphan items that are in your environment, some of that tech debt that's already in there. And then in number 7, clean up all the defaults. There's some OWASP, just basic stuff. Clean up your defaults that are out there and lock it down. Again, don't make it easier for the bad actors to be able to gain control of your infrastructure. Ports are still a thing. Lock down your ports. You've got unsecured ports and you are allowing for unsecured traffic. Add some certificates to it. Lock them down to only what traffic should be coming in. Are you scanning to make sure that, are you preventing such in a way that you're only allowing certain IPs coming in or certain types of traffic coming in? Are you scanning for that? Are you looking at it from a layer 7 approach, etc.? Lock it down. Then encrypt all the things. It's like the MFA. Encrypt all the things. We've got so much processing power these days. Go and do it. Local disk encryption. Encrypt your traffic in flight. Encrypt it at rest. Do this, just like the MFA piece. All right, so I actually have a poll for you guys. Now that we have a good idea of why we want to perform a pen test, what are some of the options, what are some of the things that a pen tester needs to successfully achieve your expectations? I'm gonna go ahead and pull a poll here. All right, there you go. I'm starting to see the results coming in. I'll give it a few more seconds as we get half of the population voted. All right. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop it and demonstrate what we got. Okay, so what does a pen tester need to set up to be set up for success? Really, all of these. But I like where you guys were going with this. And as I was watching the poll coming through, it was telling it where your heads are. Yeah, the credentials not so much, which is good, which is why that one's lower down the totem pole. What's in and out of scope is absolutely important. In fact, we're going to go over a whole thing on just the scope. The success criteria is also important. It's also important in conversation. If you ever venture out to improve the conversation, going using frameworks like the conversation for action, having that success criteria is so important. Yes, timelines. Timelines are key to this. Some of the reasons why we may not get to everything in an assessment when it's too broad, maybe the timeline is too short because there's financial restrictions on the customer end. IP addresses are important too. Correct IP addresses. Let me make sure that's clear. Correct IP addresses. It happens more often than it probably should, where the pen testing organization gets an incorrect IP address or gets an incorrect scope, whether it's supposed to be a /16, you give us like a /24, and we're like, you really have a /24? Like, yeah, we really have a /24, but really you're trying to scan against a /16. Or sorry, /32. I'm sorry. There goes my networking cred. Testing restrictions. Yeah, what are we not supposed to be testing against? If we start finding a box and we're seeing services that otherwise would be exploitable, should we continue the testing? Yeah, having that in there is important. Where tests should be performed. Some people would like the tests to be performed on site or at our data center or at their data center, remotely over VPN. That's also very important as well. Great. To better answer this question, let's go through the process that a hacker will actually go through. And go through this really quick because I want to make sure that I'm tracking time okay. There's 5 main steps in launching an attack and really gaining some information or gaining something out of it. You're going to recon the environment, you're going to scan the environment, you're going to gain access, you're going to try to maintain access as a bad actor, and then you're trying to cover your tracks. Let's flip this into how a pen tester on the red team will do it. On the recon, it's the same type of thing as the bad actor is going to do. We're going to gather information on the target. We're going to formulate how we're going to carry out our, in bad actor's case, it's going to be an attack. In our case, it's going to be a test. Full transparency and say, hey, here's what we're finding so far, and here's how we're going to launch our test. If that's something that's part of your success criteria. Use tools and techniques to gather more intel on the targets. Some of the scanning utilities that are out there. Some of the tools and tricks of the trade that are out there to be able to see, open ports or open sessions and be able to establish a session. And then attempt to gain access. Actually launch these planned attacks and tests against the targets using the recon information that was gathered. In the case of a white box or a gray box test, also using intel gathered from the customer about the environment. right? Maintain access. So a bad actor is going to use this to be able to provide backdoors, reverse shells, to be able to get a way back in. In the case of pen testing, however, we're going to identify what these ways are, document them, to be able to then give to you so that you can further improve your security posture. And then covering tracks. It would be terrible for us to go through, be able to break into a system and then erase everything, right? That's not the point. The point of this is to be able to help protect and help to improve. So while a bad actor would do that and just like blast away everything that it could get access to, so that it cover all the tracks, we're going to make sure that we document this and say, hey, here's what we did. Did that show up in your logs? And then you can use that to further lock down and monitor your environments. Some of the areas where we want to answer the question from the poll, we want to take this type of an approach and start to identify what are the risks and where we should focus our attention. So in the question before about, should we just brute force something and just knock it over until it's done? Where does that focus occur? We want to be very ginger with the environment. We want to be very delicate with it and really just perform some surface layer tests without breaking the system to be able to see how far we can get, because breaking the system is going to raise some alarm bells as well, right? Because your customers are going to say, I can't access whatever services that you're providing. We also want to understand what the types of vulnerabilities are. If we're working in a server environment, the type of vulnerabilities for the operating system or the applications that are backing that. If it's a serverless environment, we're going to want to look at IAM, Lambda, different applications and the vulnerability that they have on the cloud provider side, and make sure that the cloud provider is doing what they're saying they're doing. If testing in a production environment, it could be more serious testing to be performed and very much more delicate. So we may ask that if you've got a test environment that is better suited for this, that rolls up into prod, maybe we test the test environment. If you're confident that these are like for like environments, or at least similar enough. And then use this towards determining what the intention is and the expectations are. If the intention is to go at it as a bad actor, our environment is totally good, great. If it's don't do that, don't knock over systems, we want to be able to see what information can be gained from a first couple passes without knocking the system over, also great. There's a lot to be learned with the vulnerability scans and the penetration tests in tandem to be able to really understand where your risks are from a technical point of view, also from a process point of view. Okay, so one of the common responses that we saw earlier was scope. Scope is very important. You want to understand the expectations. And some of the expectations are, it can take a few weeks for a report to be generated. There's a lot that goes on into a penetration test, and there's a lot of documentation to be done with that, and a lot of analysis to be done from that. And again, do you want your tester to be gentle, or do you want them to knock over a server or two? Much to the conversation earlier, if the scope is too wide or the duration window is too narrow, all systems may not be tested. We may not be able to get to all systems. Are you okay with that? Let's talk about some of the tests that are out there. Of course, we've got social engineering, we've got physical vulnerability testing, white box and black box, whereas the difference in that is we either know what we're getting into, we have like source code available to us as we're going through and we're performing the security analysis, or it's black box. We're presenting ourselves as the bad actor, and we're going to try to find out as much information as we can and then launch an attack accordingly. Is it a segmented architecture? Is it application testing? And the segmented architecture, is it network segmentation? Do each of the segments that are attached to it, do they also need to be scanned? And really understanding what it is that we're trying to test. And that comes back to being prepared. So in a serverless environment, keep in mind that in a serverless environment, applications have a similar risk to traditional web applications. So consider the OWASP top 10 when you're assessing your own posture for cybersecurity. Watch for information gathering. Don't give the attackers more than what they need. Don't give them a better understanding of your application. Watch for injection attacks. The injection attacks actually they work against Lambda functions as well. And they can be used to be able to exfiltrate data. Watch for broken authentication. Rate limit your authentication. Put those protections into place. You're going to also want to look for the injection vulnerabilities, because these injection vulnerabilities can then be used to be able to dump variables like session tokens, access keys, other things that you really don't want to get out there. You can also be able to use that to be able to enumerate users or enumerate other data that's out there. Also, make sure that your pen testers are thorough in their analysis when assessing the serverless environments. All right, some of the technical aspects of pen testing. Preparation. Help us help you. When you're looking at your environment to be pen tested, make sure that you have your team set up in such a way that they can provide access to the pen tester if it's something that we're going to be testing on your internal infrastructure. Show that the VPN and jump boxes are ready. You wouldn't want to have delays. We planned this out months in advance, and we're ready to go, hit the ground running. We wouldn't want delays. You want to be able to lock down findings as soon as you can. Ensure that your environment and your team is ready for your tester to be on your systems. If something does get knocked over, make sure that you're prepared to enact your disaster recovery plans. Wouldn't want that to be something that you have to run a fire drill on. Make sure that you have your run books ready. So thank you. This is the red versus blue type of thing. On the pen testers, we've got the red team, and they're going to do their darndest to be able to access the environment per the scope that's allowed. Consult with your internal IT team, as well as our RSI experts, to understand and develop really clear objectives that you're trying to get out of your vulnerability and pen test. Identify the scope and the deliverables. We can absolutely help you with that. Work through the report and the findings. Walk through with one of our analysts. Make sure that we're adhering to the regulatory compliances and that the technical controls that you have in place are meeting those needs. Walk through the results of the test. Analyze and fully understand where the risks are and what the high, medium, and low likelihood is of these actually taking place. Then retest. You're going to be patching your systems. You're going to be eliminating some of these vulnerabilities. You're going to be training your end users. You're going to be training your technical teams. Retest. Make sure that they actually have been patched and that they haven't opened up additional vulnerabilities. And then repeat, rinse and repeat. Much like the regulatory compliances said, you may need to do it annually, definitely repeat it. The more you do it, the better you're going to be.
Thank you so much, Ben. So before we get to the question and answer portion, I wanted to go over a few resources that I'll be emailing everybody tomorrow. I'll be sending you this presentation. I'll be sending you a link to request a consultation. So if you're looking to get some help or you have any questions about anything that we discussed today, we're here to guide you. And lastly, I'll be sending you a certificate awarding your 1 CP credit for attending today's webinar. So you can expect to receive all of that tomorrow. And if you don't get the email by tomorrow, you can email marketing@rsisecurity.com. It's marketing@rsisecurity.com. So let's get into the question and answer portion. Back to you, Ben.
Awesome. Thank you. So one of the things that we didn't cover in detail were some of the techniques that our organization uses. We use some common off-the-shelf products as well as some developed over time testing utilities. As you're going through your certified ethical hacking, your OSCP certifications, or bringing on security analysts onto your team, you'll start bringing in usually the Gartner Magic Quadrant of applications that are out there to be able to test your own internal systems. Some of this is tricks of the trade, and some of this is in-house developed. As we're seeing additional vulnerabilities come out into the wild, we will develop different tools to be able to tackle that in the form of scripts or in the form of applications. One of the questions that we got earlier today was, what are some of the specific languages that we should watch for in the agreement that allows pen testers to breach info but not manipulate or steal it? So contract language is something that it may be outside of me because I'm not a lawyer, but I would definitely have you talk with some of our internal team members on that one. So we can table that one. That is a good question. As long as, for me, when I'm reading contracts, I want to see it pretty plainly that that's actually the case. We want to maintain the integrity of data. We don't want to take more than we're allowed to take. So if you're got concerns about that, just make sure that that's either in there as part of the scope of work, or it's in an addendum as what's covered or not covered in scope for the task. So we got any more questions coming in? How has the testing changed post-COVID? We found that more customers are opting for remote testing and more comfortable with the sharing of results via Skype without our Teams or Google Meet rather than going on site. We're still gaining access to internal infrastructures over VPN or sending our team members on site. So it hasn't changed too much other than the way in which we're sharing the reports at the end of the day. We're getting some more in here. Oh, yes. So I'm taking a look at Dave's answer here. So yeah, I mean, the number of consultations that we're having has absolutely increased. We have brought on additional consultants to be able to tackle more pen tests, and also been bringing on additional resources. But we had already been doing that since the beginning of the year. So we're just executing on the existing plan. Yeah. You're right, though. The increase of cyber attacks since COVID-19, the bad actors aren't sleeping. They're taking full advantage of the new landscape, and with everybody being at home, the human aspect is even more vulnerable since you're not able to really protect your users behind your intrusion detection systems and intrusion prevention systems. It makes it much more difficult, as well as the phone and phishing and stuff like that. So your social engineering is even more vulnerable. So making sure you have that human firewall, right, to be able to protect your end users. let's see. We got time for about one more. Let's go through this. There's a technical one that I'm looking here from Jerome. I may need to understand your environment because you got a couple different things going on in there. Are able to compromise these types of environments? And he's talking about VLANs and firewalls prohibit traffic from other VLANs, credit card processing, are able to compromise these types of environments. You know, no environment is 100% safe. So depending on any type, it could be a misconfiguration. We can go through the OWASP top 10, right? And see if there's anything in there. We could take a look at the type of traffic that's being pushed through your environment, how your VLANs are actually set up. Are you susceptible to VLAN hopping? And moving on from there. So it very well could be compromisable depending on the environment. It's well worth having a vulnerability and pen test into that environment to be able to validate or invalidate whether it is compromisable or not. What's the career path look like for a pen tester? It looks pretty good. I've seen some pretty interesting careers grow based off of a few books and a lot of YouTube. So as you're going through your cybersecurity training and development, start practicing. Build up some systems. Use some of the hackable machines that are out there today, and that you can join some groups to be able to help further that part of your career. If you've got a lot of passion for it, go seek it out. There are capture the flag events actively going on even today. For like DEF CON, for example, wasn't shut down. It just went virtual, right? A lot of things virtual. We've got virtual machines, for instance, and virtual applications and all of the stuff that goes along with that. Absolutely, it's a booming sector of IT. So, yeah. Again, we might, I'm taking note on that to see if there is a career path webinar. If that's of interest to a number of people, we might do that. Let's take this one last one here. You see an increase in executive level C-ring support from customers from their CISO security departments. Our execs still, I don't understand the impact of that. You know, it's, okay, cool. Thanks, David. You know, sometimes it's refreshing to be able to get in front of a C-suite that really understands the vulnerabilities that they're holding on to. Occasionally, there will be customers that do not yet embody the risk that they're actually holding on to. And as security professionals, as we're trying to help others understand the risks that are in front of them, at some points, until they're actually in that breach scenario and they're going through trying to find out where everything went wrong within that breach scenario, without go into like an example, it doesn't become something that's real. And so so the mindset of, well, let's not spend more than 2% of the budget on cybersecurity because, you know, what are we really doing? Is it really just, is it security theater? Are we really going to be attacked? Nobody wants to get our data. There's more things that bad actors are being able to use to sell and as well as exploit and then use environments as jumping points that you don't want to be a part of, right? We can go through the whole identifying these risks and applying fear, but educating the executive team on what risk they're actually holding from a business point of view and how it pertains to the impact on production, how it pertains to the impact on dollars that they're spending to be able to bring in additional customers, how marketing is going to be seen. Really understanding that full picture is part of what we do in our consultations. So if you're having struggles with that, give us a call. We can help articulate some of the ways in which you can have these conversations with your executive team. But you're right, but it's unfortunate out there that it is still an issue. Yeah, I appreciate it. Having a webinar, making the business understand the importance of cybersecurity. Yeah. So there are always the compliance and regulation rules out there. Some of the frameworks that you'll need to adhere to will help with talking to the business. One of the frameworks that seems to be getting a lot of traction these days is the FAIR framework, where that goes over an analytical approach towards what your risks are, the likelihood of those risks actually occurring, and a quantitative approach to understanding what that risk actually means for your business, not only for the tangibles, but for the intangibles. So there's some good frameworks that are coming out to be able to try to address this, and that's a good idea for an additional webinar on being able to help the business understand what the importance of cybersecurity is. So thank you for that. All right, and I think that's all the time that we have for today. Great. If I didn't get to your question, please make sure that you have your contact information updated and posted within your registration. We would love to be able to have a conversation about how we can help and help the overall community be more secure. That's the goal, right? So thank you again. Appreciate everybody's time. Looking forward to Safer Tomorrow. Take care.